That's where we find people who get stuck and why they get numb and why they are desensitized, because they will end up playing that same track again. Oh, I remember how Johnny hurt me. The current situation may not even have all the similar details as the past or previous situation, but there's that thread right there.
In mind, it's the spirit. In mind, keep the spirit in mind.
That's saying that even the end of this life is not the cessation of my life. So that kind of faith, that's the great hope of the gospel. That kind of faith always says, now what I'm going through now, it's not spiritually bypassing, because it's acknowledging that what I'm going through now is hurtful, it's difficult, I'm going through changes. I may need to talk to somebody about it to help me get through it. I'm acknowledging that, but I'm also acknowledging that the suffering of the present time is not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be future-oriented, revealed, because I'm not denying the difficulty now, but this kind of faith always says that what's ahead of me is going to be better. And that kind of hope gives us the determination to make it through when things get broken and plans change.
Yeah, Bishop, I feel the momentum stirring here, because what you just said is so powerful when you talk about one decision away from changing your life, and that is that faith, the faith to change the narrative. That is so important because there's so many different narratives and mental tracks that I'll say. We have a mental talk track will play over and over in our heads. And I know we were dating ourselves a little bit earlier when you used the word heyday, and I may just date myself a little bit again with regard to the tape recorder. You know, you press rewind and then the same song plays over and over again. You can hit repeat. And let me tell you, that's what happens when broken plans occur, is that things that you never had settled within yourself internally will find themselves replaying over and over again.
Right.
And that's where we find people who get stuck and why they get numb and why they are desensitized, because they will end up playing that same track again. Oh, I remember how Johnny hurt me. Oh, I remember when he left me before. Oh, I remember when she did this to me, or how this person abused me. And the current situation may not even have all the similar details as the past or previous situation, but there's that thread right there that just reminds you when that person said something, they could have just said no. And that no and that rejection reminded you of how you were rejected, even when you were a child or a teenager or something previously that had been done to you. So thank you, Bishop, because that is so key that we have to watch that mental talk track that will pop up when those plans are broken, because they are set there. They're just waiting for somebody to press play.
Yeah, yeah. And they're hardwired in the sense we almost have to excavate them and change them. And they have it basically they all come down to similar things like I'm not good enough. It's my fault. Good things don't happen to me. All those things. And sometimes those narratives, as you alluded to, are so related to earlier experiences. Sometimes I'm dealing with persons who, I was dealing with persons who have, for example, had a really bad experience in childhood with divorce. When their parents divorced, and that was beyond their control. And but the narrative that developed was it was my fault. And if I had been a better kid, they would have stayed together, or they left because, and part of they remembered literally saying, we'll be good if you come back home, and that kind of thing. Just heartbreaking to hear. But that narrative of I always mess things up. Then when other things happen, They internalize that. And so that's why it's so important to realize and even ask ourselves when these changes happen. It's human to have emotional reactions to change. We're especially the more we invested time, effort, energy, and emotions into the planning process. When it changes, it's human to have those kind of reactions. But how we process them from there, including sometimes we have to ask ourselves, where's this coming from? What else is connected to my reaction to this? What from my past am I bringing into my present perceptions? And what narratives is it excavating and bringing up for me that I'm applying to this? And things don't go right for me. Wow, how can we change that narrative so that you can continue to try to move on and experience resilience, quite frankly?
And this is where it takes work. Again, this is why Bishop was mentioning about the need for a therapist, the need for sometimes a third party person to come in to help you do the work. Because this is not easy work. When you're dealing with a broken plan and again, and maybe the impact of the plan or the seriousness of the plan, you may have to have someone come in to help you, because those negative mental talk tracks, they take some time to uproot and to get rid of and to destroy. Because when that person goes to press play, there needs to be a hand to catch it.
Right. It's and because we don't always even, I would say, suggest that we don't always even recognize them because they become such a part of our ways of being, doing, and thinking that we just say them, and sometimes somebody else, because it doesn't make us deficient beings, it makes us human beings. And so in my humanity, so I'm just talking, I'm explaining things, and sometimes all of us need that to say that again. Okay, so what were you thinking in that moment? I hear you saying that things never go right for you. Do you really believe things never go right for you? Because oh yeah, well, I guess I do. But I never really thought of it that way.
Mhm.
Because that's why we get the help. That's why we need each other. And so
Right.
we might not even recognize it. Yeah.
Right. And I want to encourage people, let them know it's okay if the thought occurs.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm going to say that again. It's okay. I'm going to lift that up. It's okay if the thought occurs. The decision, which is why we made the emphasis on you're one decision away from having a better life or from changing your life. The decision is whether or not do you believe it. The decision is whether or not do you keep it playing. The decision or not is do you hold on to it so tight that you can't let go to allow another belief to occur. So yeah, I just want to encourage people. You sometimes cannot stop thoughts that will bubble up. All right. And I want to say many times you cannot stop thoughts that will bubble up. But what you can do, you can snatch it and be able to bring it under subjection, under the will and power of the Lord, of the Holy Ghost. And that's why, again, you need to make sure that you are operating in faith, as Bishop talked about. It is something that we find ourselves. There was something else, Bishop, that I want to go back to that you mentioned regarding volunteers. And thank you for mentioning that, because this is an area where I tend to find a lot of people who come to me who are disappointed, they're disgusted, and they find themselves quietly quitting. They're present, but they're no longer operating in the full or at the optimal peak. Because when a volunteer finds themselves disappointed, disgusted, with distrust, they might say, well, they're not paying me no way. I'm doing this, out of the goodness of my heart, so to speak. The vernacular that people will use. And I just want to speak to the volunteers. Yes, it may be the fact that you're not getting paid, but you're getting paid financially. But let me tell you, there is a financial award that goes with it. It may not come through currency, but there may come a benefit that you were not going to get when when you were not volunteering or when you didn't have the right attitude. I just want to remind people about that. But yeah, I see that quite common when I'm dealing with faith believers or faith organizations with the volunteers. Um, they'll bring things that they've been carrying, baggage, if you would, from the outside. Again, it could be from childhood. It could come if they were moved from a different ministry to now the current ministry. That's why you have to take time to vet people. You have to take time to make sure that you understand where they're coming from. There's a lot of introspective work. That's a lot of what we're talking about today. We're talking about living with the broken plans. You want to make sure that you take that time to examine yourself. Again, for some people, that can be scary. And that's why we always encourage, lift up, strongly recommend, I'll say that way too, having a therapist, a good therapist, a psychiatrist if you need medication management to help you to work through some of these broken plans when you find yourself not able to operate, not able to function, find yourself in a place that is in a very dark place that you can't find yourself being lifted up out of that. Yeah, Bishop. I don't know if you want to say anything else to that. Yeah.
And a good pastoral care provider, especially in this subject that we're talking about now, because volunteer work has all work. There's nothing wrong with of course we have to be gainfully employed, but the subject for now is volunteer work. And so, as we said, anywhere from 50 to 75%, depending on the size of the ministry, but all ministries use volunteer staff, all do, even if it's just the ushers or the hospitality greeters. But all ministries, with choir, but all ministries consist of volunteer staff, varying from 50% to 75%. But so do other institutions, hospitals, for example, according to the CDC. About 12% of women and 5% of men, that's 17% of hospital staff are volunteers. Some are students, like when I was doing my internships in school, in graduate school. And so volunteerism is a really profoundly spiritual endeavor in this sense. I'm not saying that working isn't, but we're talking about this is because, as Dr. Shepard just said, there is a reward, there is a payoff, but it's not necessarily money. And money is only one form of capital.
Right.
Social capital, there's ethical capital, there's multiple things. That's a whole nother lesson. But money is only one form of capital. But spiritually, in terms of whether we're talking in the academic sense of spirituality or the specific Christian sense, that is my call and vocation, we're talking about things that give meaning and purpose to our existence. Logos therapy, the healing power of having meaning, as Viktor Frankl called it, psychiatrist, in his classic book, Man's Search for Meaning. And so what it usually means, because I'm doing a lot of work right now in the area of recovery from organizational trauma. And what the research is showing is that when there's a loss of meaning and purpose is how we end up saying things like, well, it was just a job. I ain't getting paid. They ain't giving me no money. Those kinds of things indicate that there's a loss of significance of the greater, bigger meaning and purpose, which, as we know, we have a wide variety of people. So I'm putting it in different languages. But whether we're talking about the traditional Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs, the spiritual things are on a higher level of consciousness. So we have to work with persons who get to that place. They have reached a place of despair in that quiet quitting where meaning has been affected. It's really a profoundly spiritual wound in that sense, which is why the work would be to revisit the meaning. What was your motivation? Was it for political gain and political capital, or was your payoff when you help someone to experience life in a better way. If that was the payoff, then we need to focus back on that. What was your reason for doing this? Was it for self-glorification or self-motivation, or were you projecting unrealistic expectations on organizations to fulfill family wounds? So maybe if we deal with the family wounds. So that's why I'm saying just quiet quitting without conversation is very important. So you actually need, I would suggest, an ecosystem of psychospiritual care in those cases for the proverbial church hurt. Is that, and how does that connect to your projections and transference from familial experiences? Because what's the source of the hurt? Is it an unrealistic expectation? Was it an unhealthy projection? Or was it a need? Was it something else? So it could be a variety of things, but that's why the ecosystem of therapeutic intervention, pastoral care, and just a good physician, all of that can help make sure we are healthy spirit, soul, and body in the language of Scripture.
Absolutely. So I hope you all caught that we need a healthy ecosystem. You need to have a good pastor. I love how Bishop continues to emphasize that, because sometimes I'll hear people say we just need Jesus and a therapist. But we here at Spirit in Mind, we do not forget the role, and we lift up the role, emphasize the role of the pastor. Spiritual
not to mention, I'm sorry, but the professor of critical thinking is kicking in to say that phrase is also a false equivalence. Jesus and the pastor, in terms of fallacious thinking. Jesus and the third one is very human, the other one is divine, and so they're good, but you need, and you don't want to equate them, and you don't want to create idols.
Yes.
Also, John Calvin said the human heart is a factory of idols. And so we'll find a way to create an idol. And so we want to be clear in our delineation. Same as I hear people saying, Jesus and anytime you put that together, you just want to be mindful, since we're there, of the orthodoxy of the sufficiency of Christ. And so you don't want to create, you don't want to turn a conduit into an additive, to put it in a mathematical equation. So it's not Jesus plus a therapist equals healing, as I saw some t-shirts say. Now, Jesus is a sufficient healer in the language of Christian orthodoxy.
Yes.
He is the healer, and others are conduits. So it's not Jesus plus, it's Jesus through. Now, if you're not Christian and you don't subscribe to that, then, at least acknowledge that. But if we're talking about Orthodox Christianity, orthodoxy means right teachings, or the established convictions of the faith, then we are all conduits, and the healer is the great physician.
Absolutely. And Jesus is the great physician, and he is the healer.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Spirit in Mind, and we're also on Instagram at Spirit in Mind Live. Join us next time for a new episode of Spirit in Mind.